Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. The US-China chip war is heating up, but what does it mean for India's booming tech industry? Will India be caught in the crossfire, or can it emerge as a global semiconductor powerhouse? We're going to explore just that today.
It's a really critical question right now. The stakes are incredibly high.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics. Semiconductors, they're often called microchips, right? But they're much more fundamental than just components in our phones.
Exactly. They really are the unseen heartbeat of modern technology. At their core, they're usually made from elements like silicon or germanium.
Right, silicon mostly.
Yes, typically silicon. And their conductivity, their ability to carry an electric current, is precisely controlled through a process called doping.
Doping. Sounds intriguing.
It just means adding tiny, tiny amounts of impurities.
Mm.
This alters their electrical properties, letting them act as switches or amplifiers. These are the absolute building blocks for, well, basically all modern electronics.
And the pace of change has been just staggering. I mean, we went from chips in the mid-60s with maybe 4 transistors
Four. It's hard to even imagine now.
to today's smartphone chips packing, what, 15 billion transistors? That number is just mind-boggling.
It truly is an exponential leap in computing power, and it really underscores why these tiny things are so vital.
So where do we see them? Obviously phones and computers, but it goes way beyond that.
Oh, absolutely everywhere. Think about civilian applications. They're the backbone of ICT, information and communication technology. Server farms, the internet itself, the smallest smart devices.
Your smart toaster, maybe?
Pretty much. And think about cars. A modern car has thousands of chips. Thousands. Managing everything from the engine to your navigation, your music.
And electric vehicles need even more, right? I read somewhere it's almost double.
That's right. EVs are packed with electronics, so they require nearly twice as many chips as the traditional combustion engine car. Then you have the Internet of Things, IoT devices everywhere.
And AI, artificial intelligence, seems to have an insatiable appetite for computing power.
Completely insatiable. You mentioned ChatGPT. Earlier reports suggest it was trained on something like 10,000 sophisticated CPUs. That's a massive, concentrated demand, and it's only going up.
Wow, okay, so that covers the civilian side. But there's a military dimension too, which is crucial for understanding the geopolitics.
Hugely important. Semiconductors are absolutely essential for modern weaponry, defense systems, surveillance, communications. Chip capabilities are directly linked to national security. Control over this tech is paramount for global powers.
Which brings us to the economics. This isn't just strategically important, it's a massive global industry.
Massive. The market just for the materials used to make semiconductors was estimated at over $70 billion in 2023, and that's projected to hit nearly $89 billion within 5 years.
Just the materials, what about the overall industry?
The whole global semiconductor industry, it's expected to reach $1 trillion in revenue by 2030. $1 trillion. And we're seeing a strong rebound right now. After a dip in 2023, projections for 2024 show about 16.8% growth, maybe hitting $624 billion.
So the demand is definitely bouncing back. Where's that growth coming from specifically? Which types of chips?
Microprocessors are a key area, especially GPUs, graphics processing units. They're vital for AI, high-performance computing, and increasingly those complex automotive systems we talked about.
Right, GPUs aren't just for video games anymore.
Not at all. They're the workhorses for AI training. Then you have sensors, MEMS, microelectromechanical systems, and optoelectronics also seeing strong growth.
And memory chips. I heard they were in a slump.
They were, but the memory market, NAND flash, DRAM, is seeing a significant rebound too. It points to a broad recovery across the industry.
So this surge isn't random. It's tied to these huge global shifts. AI adoption, EVs, autonomous driving, 5G networks, IoT, all driving this unprecedented demand.
Exactly. These aren't just trends. They're transformations fundamentally reshaping demand for semiconductors.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. Now let's get into the chip war itself. The U.S. strategy seems focused on limiting China's technological rise. What are the core motivations there?
It's complex, but boils down to a few key things. National security is paramount, the concern about potential military use of advanced tech by China. There are also long-standing issues around intellectual property theft.
Right, that's been a point of contention for years.
Absolutely. And then there's the broader competition for technological dominance in the 21st century. Who leads in AI, quantum computing, biotech? Semiconductors underpin all of that.
So this really started heating up with the U.S.-China trade war back in 2018.
Yes, that's when it became much more overt. Initially, it was broad tariffs on Chinese imports, which hit the semiconductor industry indirectly because chips are in so many products.
But then it got much more targeted.
Much more. The focus shifted to specific Chinese companies, particularly the big telecom giants like Huawei and ZTE.
Ah, yes, Huawei. They were hit really hard, weren't they?
Extremely hard. Huawei was placed on the U.S. Entity List in May 2019. That essentially blocked U.S. companies from supplying them.
And then it got even tighter.
It did. In May 2020, the U.S. introduced the Foreign Direct Product Rule. This was a major escalation. It meant that even chips made outside the U.S. couldn't be supplied to Huawei if they were produced using U.S. technology or software unless you got a specific license.
Which is most advanced chips, basically.
Pretty much. The impact was dramatic. Huawei's global smartphone market share crashed from around 18% in 2020 down to just 2% by 2022. It shows the incredible leverage the U.S. has through its technology.
That's a stark example. Beyond targeting companies, the U.S. also made a huge domestic move with the TCPS and Science Act in 2022. Tell us about that.
The TCPS Act is a landmark piece of legislation, a massive $280 billion overall package,
$180 billion.
with $52 billion specifically carved out for semiconductor manufacturing, R&D, and workforce development right here in the U.S., plus another $24 billion in tax credits to incentivize building chip factories domestically.
So it's a serious push to bring manufacturing back.
Absolutely. The explicit goals are to strengthen American manufacturing, make supply chains more resilient, bolster national security, and ensure the U.S. stays ahead in critical future industries: nanotech, clean energy, quantum, AI.
And is it working? Are companies actually investing because of this act?
There we're seeing huge commitments. Intel, for example, has a preliminary deal for up to $8.5 billion in direct funding, plus loans for its U.S. plants. They're talking about investing over $100 billion in the U.S. over 5 years.
Wow.
And TSMC, the world's biggest chip maker from Taiwan, they've got an agreement for billions in grants and loans for their new facilities in Arizona. Overall, industry commitments in the U.S. spurred by the act have already topped $231 billion.
That's a colossal amount of investment flowing back. So the U.S. is using carrots, the TCPS Act funding, but also sticks, right? These stringent export controls.
Exactly. In October 2022, the U.S. rolled out really comprehensive export controls aimed squarely at China.
What do these controls actually do?
They make it much harder for China to get its hands on critical technologies. They ban the transfer or sale of certain advanced chips made using U.S. tech without a license. They restrict the export of the sophisticated tools needed to make advanced chips.
So not just the chips, but the machines that make the chips.
Precisely. And they even limit U.S. citizens or companies from working with Chinese semiconductor manufacturers in certain capacities.
And it's very focused on the high-end stuff, particularly AI chips.
Very much so. There's a specific prohibition on Chinese companies importing U.S.-designed AI chips, even if they're manufactured elsewhere like Taiwan. The concern is diversion to military uses.
Right.
And they've extended license requirements to high-end GPUs from companies like NVIDIA and AMD, the kind of chips essential for advanced AI training and military applications.
It's often described as a small yard, high fence strategy, isn't it?
That's a good way to put it. The idea isn't to completely cut off trade, but to build a very high fence around a specific, critical set of technologies to hinder China's progress in those key areas, particularly those with military implications.
Okay, so that's the U.S. playbook. How is China pushing back? What's their counter strategy?
China's #1 goal is crystal clear: achieve self-sufficiency in semiconductors. They want to break free from dependence on U.S. technology. This has been a goal for a while, but the U.S. actions have really kicked it into high gear.
And they had a plan for this even before the major U.S. restrictions, right? Made in China 2025.
That's right. Launched back in 2015, Made in China 2025 was a strategic blueprint to boost 10 high-tech industries, things like next-gen IT, AI, robotics, EVs, all heavily reliant on chips. It was about moving up the value chain.
And they've been investing enormous sums of money to make this happen.
Absolutely enormous. They set up the National Integrated Circuit Industry Fund, often called the Big Fund. It started with $21 billion in 2014, then got another $35 billion boost in 2019.
That's over $50 billion just from the central fund.
And on top of that, provincial governments raised another $25 billion. Estimates suggest total Chinese investment in the sector between 2014 and 2020 was around $150 billion. It's a massive state-directed push.
$150 billion is a staggering figure. But has all that money actually bought them parity with the global leaders? Or are there still major roadblocks?
That's the crucial question. Despite the investment, China still faces significant challenges, especially in advanced manufacturing. the actual fabrication of the most cutting-edge chips.
What's the main bottleneck?
They still lag behind global leaders like TSMC or Samsung in producing the most advanced nodes. A critical issue is their reliance on foreign companies for the most sophisticated manufacturing equipment.
Like those EUV machines we keep hearing about.
Exactly. Extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. They are absolutely essential for making chips below the 10-nanometer threshold. And basically one Dutch company, ASML, has a monopoly on this technology.
So without those specific machines from ASML, you just can't make the most advanced chips at scale.
Pretty much. It's a major choke point in the global supply chain and a key vulnerability for China's self-sufficiency drive.
And China has faced accusations of using, let's say, less conventional methods to try and acquire this kind of technology.
Yes, there have been numerous reports and accusations. Tactics mentioned include forcing foreign companies operating in China to transfer technology or share intellectual property rights as a condition of market access.
Okay.
Investing strategically in U.S. high-tech firms to gain access, actively recruiting top scientists and engineers from abroad, and, more controversially, engaging in industrial espionage and data theft.
I remember reading about ASML reporting data leaks linked to China.
Yes, ASML has reported incidents involving former employees, sometimes linked to Chinese entities,
Yeah.
stealing proprietary data like crucial software source codes. It highlights the intense pressure and the lengths some might go to bridge that technological gap.
So given these challenges and the tightening U.S. restrictions, how has China responded more recently? Are they finding workarounds?
They're definitely trying. We saw a huge spike, a 93% increase in China's imports of chip-making equipment in the third quarter of 2023.
93%.
Now, much of this was for making less advanced chips, what they call mid-critical or mature nodes. But there's concern they might be trying to adapt these machines or exploit loopholes to produce more advanced semiconductors than intended,
Pushing the limits of the equipment they can get.
potentially. And they're also exploring new collaborations, for instance, partnerships between Chinese universities and institutions in countries like Saudi Arabia on AI development. This raises flags in the West about potential indirect routes to access restricted chips or AI know-how.
It really is a constant cat and mouse game. Okay, let's pivot now. Amidst this global chip war, where does India fit in? What are its own tech ambitions?
India is definitely positioning itself as a major player in the making. It already has a strong foundation, particularly in semiconductor design.
Right, India is known for its software and design talent.
Exactly. India accounts for something like 20% of the world's integrated circuit design workforce. That's over 125,000 skilled workers already in the ecosystem. It's a huge asset.
And its domestic market is booming, which must be a big draw.
A massive draw. India's domestic semiconductor market is predicted to triple from around $22 billion in 2019 to $64 billion by 2026.
Wow, triple in just a few years.
And projections go even further, potentially $110 billion by 2030. At that point, analysts think India could represent about 10% of direct global semiconductor consumption.
Well, what's driving that demand within India?
The biggest segments are expected to be wireless communications, consumer electronics, and the automotive sector, especially with the growth of EVs there. This huge internal market makes it very attractive for companies to manufacture locally.
And India has that well-known advantage in human capital, all those engineering graduates.
A major advantage. India graduates roughly 825,000 engineers every year, and a large chunk, maybe 600,000, focus on electronics-related fields. This sheer volume is critical in an industry facing global talent shortages.
What's the potential economic ripple effect if India succeeds in building up its semiconductor industry?
It's significant. The employment multiplier is estimated to be around 16. That means for every direct job created in semiconductor manufacturing or related electronics,
16 additional jobs?
exactly. About 15 additional jobs are supported across the wider economy, suppliers, services, etc. It has the potential to be truly transformative for economic growth.
Okay, so the potential is clearly there. What specific steps is the Indian government taking to make this happen?
They've launched some very ambitious initiatives. The main one is the Semicon India program, started in December 2021. It has a budget of about $10 billion.
$10 billion. That's serious commitment.
It is. And the incentive structure is reportedly the most generous in the world right now. The central government offers to match 50% of a project's cost.
50%.
Yeah, so 50% fiscal support. And then the relevant state government can add another 20–25% on top of that. It significantly lowers the financial risk for companies wanting to set up shop.
That's incredibly attractive. Is this program just focused on building fabs, the big manufacturing plants?
Well, it's designed to be much broader. It aims to boost the entire semiconductor ecosystem supporting design, which is India's strength, but also fabrication, fabs, and crucially, assembly, test, and packaging, or ATP facilities. There are even specific incentives for display fabs.
So they want the whole value chain, not just one piece.
That's the goal, a comprehensive domestic ecosystem.
And are we seeing results? Are big companies taking the bait?
We are seeing some significant early wins. Micron Technology committed to a $2.75 billion ATP facility in Gujarat for memory chips, DRAM, and NAND. That's seen as a major test case for India's readiness.
Okay, Micron is a big name.
And the Tata Group has formed a joint venture with Taiwan's Powerchip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corp., or PSMC, to build India's first major commercial fab. They'll focus on 28-nanometer chips, which are widely used in cars, consumer goods, and more.
So actual fabs are starting to happen. Are there other supporting government programs?
Yes, there's the Broader Production Linked Incentive, or PLI, scheme. It's a $20 billion initiative overall. About $7 billion targets electronics manufacturing specifically, and the rest supports allied sectors like batteries, auto components, telecom gear, all industries that need chips.
It sounds like they're trying to create a whole supportive environment. What about the talent pipeline, getting those engineers ready for these specific jobs?
That's the focus of the Chips to Startup, or C2S, initiative. The goal is ambitious. Train 85,000 industry-ready engineers in specialized areas like VLSI design and embedded systems over 5 years, working with around 120 academic institutions.
85,000.
They want to brand India as a semiconductor talent nation. The C2S program also provides funding for startups working on chip development, and there's a key collaboration with Purdue University in the U.S. to develop specialized courses.
So tackling the skills gap head on. Okay, beyond these specific programs, what about the general business climate in India? Are they making it easier for companies to operate?
They've definitely made efforts. The Jan Vishwas bill in 2023, for instance, decriminalized over 180 minor provisions across dozens of laws. The aim was to reduce compliance burdens and improve the ease of doing business.
Cutting red tape, basically.
Exactly. And another initiative focused on reducing the regulatory compliance burden simplified things like online applications for foreign direct investment, cutting the form size significantly.
What about taxes? That's always a huge factor.
Big changes there, too. The Goods and Services Tax, or GST, implemented in 2017, was a major overhaul. It replaced a really complex web of indirect taxes with a unified system.
That was supposed to boost growth, right?
Estimates suggest it did, maybe adding 1.3% to GDP. Plus, corporate tax rates were cut down to 25% standard and even lower, 15%, for new domestic manufacturing companies set up after 2019. And there are tax breaks in special economic zones.
Sounds like a lot of moves to make the financials more attractive. How about labor laws? Can be complex in India.
Significant reforms there between 2019 and 2020. They consolidated 29 old labor laws into 4 comprehensive codes. This simplifies compliance, offers more flexibility, particularly for smaller businesses, and includes faster dispute resolution.
Okay, so simplifying things across the board. And trade, getting goods in and out.
India's made big improvements there. Its trading across borders rank jumped dramatically in the World Bank Index. And crucially, the average time container spend at ports has decreased significantly down to about 3 days recently, which is faster than the U.S. or Germany, according to some metrics.
That's surprising, actually, better than the U.S. or Germany.
On that specific metric of container dwell time, yes. Reforms like risk-based customs checks and online processes have helped speed things up.
Okay, so lots of positive steps. But it can't all be smooth sailing. What are the remaining challenges or concerns for investors looking at India?
Policy consistency is still a concern for some investors. There have been instances in the past of abrupt policy changes. A recent example was the sudden announcement of import licensing for laptops and tablets, which caused quite a stir before it was modified.
Right, that created uncertainty.
Exactly. Even if policies are adjusted later, those sudden shifts can make long-term investors nervous about predictability.
Any issues on the international trade front? Compliance with global rules?
There have been some disputes. A WTO panel ruled against India on certain tariffs on tech products, finding they violated commitments under the Information Technology Agreement.
Okay.
And another potential issue is India's stance on the WTO moratorium on customs duties for electronic transmissions. If that moratorium expires and India starts taxing data transfers, it could really impact semiconductor design firms that rely on sending massive data files across borders.
That could add significant costs for design work. So definite progress, but still some hurdles. Now let's connect this back to the chip war. How can India leverage this global push for supply chain diversification?
This is where the big opportunity lies. The whole China plus one or China plus two strategy is real and accelerating. Companies are actively looking to reduce their reliance on China.
Why the shift? Is it just cost?
It's a mix of things. The supply chain shocks from COVID-19 were a wake-up call. Rising labor and operating costs in China are a factor. Geopolitical risk is a huge one now. And cyber threats, too. Companies want resilience.
And the data shows this is actually happening.
Oh, yes. Surveys show a large majority of companies are looking to reshore or nearshore. Many U.S. companies in China are shifting operations. Resilience is now a top priority for executives, even if it means sacrificing some short-term profit.
So companies are genuinely willing to pay more for security of supply, and India is seen as a key beneficiary.
It's definitely one of the key potential beneficiaries. Along with countries in Southeast Asia like Vietnam and Thailand, India is emerging as a serious contender for companies looking to diversify away from China and Taiwan.
What makes India stand out compared to, say, Vietnam?
Several things. That massive domestic market is a huge pull over 1.4 billion potential customers. Labor costs remain competitive, lower than Mexico or Vietnam in electronics manufacturing in recent years. And those government incentives we discussed are a big plus.
We've already seen Apple making a huge move into India.
That's the headline example. From almost zero manufacturing presence 3 years ago to exporting billions of dollars worth of iPhones and other products from India. It's a major shift. And Google is also looking to assemble Pixel phones there.
And the U.S. government seems supportive of this, right? Almost encouraging collaboration.
Yes, that's key. The Biden administration has been explicit about strengthening ties with allies like India to counter China's tech dominance. U.S. Commerce Secretary Raimondo has mentioned talks about a specific U.S.-India alliance for chip manufacturing. It's strategic alignment.
What about specific sectors? The move to electric vehicles must be creating huge chip demand within India itself.
Absolutely. The EV transition is a massive driver. EVs need roughly double the chips of gasoline cars. The global market for automotive semiconductors is exploding, projected to reach well over $100 billion by 2030.
So if India can make chips for cars, it's a huge domestic and export opportunity.
Exactly. It's a perfect alignment of India's manufacturing goals and a rapidly growing global market. A real win-win potential for partnerships with leading automotive chip makers.
Okay, the opportunities are clear, but let's be realistic about the challenges. We talked about talent, that readiness gap.
Yes, that's a major hurdle. Despite graduating hundreds of thousands of engineers, only a small percentage, maybe 1%, are considered truly industry-ready for specialized semiconductor manufacturing roles right out of university.
So they need significant on-the-job training.
Often 1 to 2 years, which is a cost and time factor for companies setting up complex fabs. Plus, many top students are drawn to software, data science, or AML, rather than the core electrical engineering needed for chip manufacturing.
So there's a shortage of the right kind of specialized skills.
Yes. India's Ministry of Electronics and IT estimates a need for 10,000, 13,000 skilled workers for chip manufacturing by 2027, indicating a current gap. And India also produces relatively few masters or PhDs in semiconductor fields, limiting advanced R&D potential.
Beyond talent, what about basic infrastructure? Fabs need incredible reliability.
That remains a critical concern. While India has made strides in transport, logistics can still be slower than competitors like China. But for fabs, the absolute non-negotiables are ultra-reliable power and water.
Because any interruption is catastrophic.
Exactly. These plants run 247 and cost billions. Even a brief power flicker or water quality issue can ruin millions of dollars worth of product. Ensuring that level of infrastructure reliability across the country is a huge task.
And the supply chain for the specialized materials needed inside the fab.
India is currently heavily reliant on imports for high-purity chemicals and gases. Building domestic capacity to refine these materials to the required parts per billion purity standards needs significant investment and time.
Okay, now the geopolitical hurdles. The U.S. wants diversification, but it's not just looking at India, right?
Correct. The U.S. is somewhat agnostic about where companies move, as long as it's away from China and to friendly nations. They've signed these ITSI partnerships with 7 other countries besides India, so India faces stiff competition for that investment.
Competition from places like Vietnam that already have big electronics sectors.
Yes, Vietnam and others in Southeast Asia are deeply integrated into existing supply chains. It's an uphill battle for India to catch up, and there's a risk this competition leads to a race to the bottom on subsidies.
How does India's traditional non-aligned foreign policy play into this, especially its ties with Russia?
It's a delicate balancing act. India's relationships with countries like Russia and Iran, which face Western tech sanctions, could make the U.S. hesitant about transferring the most sensitive, cutting-edge semiconductor technology. Washington needs assurances about end-use security.
So India has to walk a tightrope between maintaining its autonomy and satisfying U.S. security concerns.
Precisely. It requires careful diplomacy and robust safeguards.
And given the tensions between India and China, Chinese investment seems off the table.
Highly unlikely. The border standoff and India's own security measures against Chinese tech firms mean India won't benefit from Chinese capital in this sector, unlike some competitors like Malaysia, who manage relationships with both the U.S. and China.
What about India's integration with East Asia's tech ecosystem generally?
Historically, India has been somewhat hesitant to deeply integrate economically with East Asia, partly due to concerns about being overwhelmed by China. Refusing to join RCEP is one example. This lack of deep integration means fewer established pathways for plugging into those regional value chains where so much chip expertise resides.
Okay, it's a complex picture. So how is India trying to manage all this? What's the strategy for building the ecosystem and navigating the geopolitics?
The core strategy has to be attracting continuous investment and systematically building out that entire domestic ecosystem: design, fab, ATP, materials, talent. It's a long-term play.
And partnerships, especially with the U.S., seem central.
Absolutely critical. There's potential for India to receive funding from the U.S. CGPSAC's International Fund, maybe in collaboration with Quad partners. Joint R&D initiatives are key.
Like that idea of a joint prototyping facility.
Yes, a testbed foundry would be very valuable for validating new chip designs. And continuing joint efforts on workforce training, like the partnership with Purdue, is essential. There's even talk of special visas to facilitate talent exchange.
So leaning into the U.S. relationship, but should India only focus on the U.S.?
No, diversification is key here too. Building strong semiconductor partnerships with South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, the EU that enhances resilience and access to different technologies and expertise. Relying solely on one partner carries its own risks.
Makes sense. Now, specifically on fixing those talent and infrastructure gaps, what needs to happen?
On talent, it's about practical hands-on training, getting engineers comfortable with operating complex fab equipment. Expanding specialized courses in universities is happening, but industry collaboration is vital to ensure the training is relevant.
And upskilling the existing workforce.
Crucial. Providing clear career paths and opportunities for continuous learning helps retain talent. And figuring out how to attract skilled workers to the new fab locations is important, avoiding the kind of labor issues seen elsewhere.
And for infrastructure, beyond just building roads.
It comes back to reliable power and water. That's non-negotiable. And incentivizing Indian chemical companies to invest in producing those ultra-pure materials domestically. Reducing import reliance is strategically important.
Finally, navigating the geopolitics, how does India thread that needle?
It requires careful statecraft, balancing relations with the U.S. and China, not being ultra-sensitive to Chinese concerns, especially regarding Taiwan, acknowledging Taiwan's vital role in the supply chain.
Because TSMC is just too important to ignore.
Exactly. India needs access to that leading-edge technology, and India needs to manage the strategic vulnerability related to its reliance on Russian military hardware, especially if Chinese chips end up in those systems.
That's a tricky one.
Very tricky. And longer term, deeper economic integration with East Asian neighbors could position India more as a collaborator in regional supply chains, not just a competitor.
Okay, so this really is shaping up to be a global game of chess, determining the future of semiconductor supply.
It absolutely is. The U.S.-China rivalry is fundamentally reshaping the landscape. The old model of purely globalized, efficiency-driven supply chains is changing.
Towards something more fragmented, localized.
Yes, we're seeing reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring, all aimed at building resilience, even if it's less efficient. It's about de-risking supply.
Could we see entirely separate tech blocs forming, like Europe and Asia collaborating more closely, independent of the U.S.?
That's a definite possibility. Non-U.S. alliances could emerge to create more redundancy and reduce dependence on any single power. It's a move towards a multipolar tech world.
What are the long-term consequences of this fragmentation for the industry?
Persistent trade friction tariffs, export controls, maybe even chip dumping, constant supply chain adjustments. It creates a more volatile and complex operating environment for companies.
How might businesses react? More consolidation.
Likely. Increased M&A is possible, especially as distinct markets might emerge, one for cutting-edge AI chips, another for everything else. Companies with key IP or manufacturing niches could become acquisition targets.
And amidst all this geopolitical maneuvering, the technology itself keeps racing ahead, pushing beyond Moore's law.
Yes, innovation doesn't stop. We're moving past just shrinking transistors. Advanced materials are key. Wide bandgap semiconductors like silicon carbide and gallium nitride are taking over from silicon in high-power applications.
Things like EVs.
Exactly. And even more futuristic stuff like spintronics using graphene or carbon nanotubes for lower power, faster processing, especially for AI, and quantum dots for displays, solar cells, even quantum computing.
So the very materials are changing. What about how chips are built? Architectures.
Big changes there, too. The move towards chiplets is huge assembling systems from smaller, specialized functional blocks rather than one giant chip. It offers flexibility and efficiency.
And that requires better packaging.
Crucial. Advanced packaging 2.5D 3D integration is what allows these chiplets to work together seamlessly in a compact space. It's as innovative as the chips themselves. And EUV lithography continues to be the key enabler for manufacturing the most advanced nodes.
We also hear about shift left in design. What does that mean practically?
It means doing testing and verification much earlier in the design process. Instead of finding flaws right at the end, you build in checks all along the way. It reduces the risk of costly redesigns or respins and improves reliability.
Using AI to help.
Absolutely. AI tools optimize designs for power, performance, and area, PPA, find bugs earlier, and even generate novel design approaches. Digital twins allow virtual testing. It's about building quality, security, and safety in from the start, especially for critical applications.
So this incredibly dynamic technological and geopolitical landscape is the world India is stepping into.
Precisely. India's ability to navigate this complex, fragmented, regionalizing world and carve out a strategic role is vital for its future. Success hinges on sustained, focused partnerships, investment, building that domestic ecosystem.
It truly is an intricate global game of chess, as you said. The future of technology, economics, and even security hangs in the balance. Maybe the question for you, our listener, is, in this reshaped world, where will the critical nodes of technological power reside in 10 or 20 years?
It's the multi-trillion-dollar question, and India is determined to be one of the key players holding some of the crucial pieces on that board.
Thank you for joining us for this analysis. We encourage you to share your own thoughts in the comments section below, and please join the conversation on our social media channels. You can find the links in the description.